Curse of Chucky is the sixth installment in the Chucky franchise, and was first distributed on video on demand before going straight to video. Maybe it should have been part of my direct-to-videothon back in 2014. Curiously, it was written and directed by Don Mancini, who wrote every Chucky movie to date. That's really rare, given that most horror franchises have a completely different crew from sequel to sequel. Shot on a budget of just $5 million, you can tell that the filmmakers definitely wanted to go back to their roots and do something that was actually dark and scary for a change. That means no rappers, no transsexual puppets, and no Jennifer Tilly, at least for the majority of the film. The main character is a paraplegic named Nika, played by Fiona Dourif, Brad Dourif's daughter. She gets sent a rather large package with no sender on the label. Her mom, Sarah, opens the package, and what do you know? It's Chucky, without a scratch on him. At first glimpse, it would seem that this is a reboot. The last two films depicted Chucky when he was all scarred to hell, or in the very least, it seems to just ignore those films and continue from Child's Play 2. Within minutes, Sarah gets killed, off-screen, and the police call it a suicide, given Sarah's history of mental illness. Nika's extended family moves in when her older sister Barb reveals her true motive of selling Nika's house so she can get out of debt.
Well, you know we've been struggling. You have a live-in nanny.
As usual, my number one problem with this movie is that most of the characters are unlikable, and given that the central protagonist is handicapped, it feasts on your emotions, but it also feels a bit tasteless. This girl gets stabbed a number of times, and because of her disability, she can't feel anything. I know it's a horror movie, but that all sounds really cruel. Like I said, the rest of the characters are pretty disposable. They're just to be killed off. You've got Barb, the overprotective mother and sister, who's always bossing people around.
Eat it.
Barb's husband, Ian, who doesn't seem to really pay attention to his family. A priest, Father Frank, who's there for all of 2 scenes. And the ditzy blonde nanny, Jill. Right off the bat, they play it off as if Jill and Ian are having an affair. Then they do a 180 where it turns out that it's Barb and Jill who are actually fooling around. Ian knows about this and actually sets up a nanny cam inside of Chucky so he can spy on the two of them. Anyway, back to the movie. In terms of the way it's shot, the cinematography is really effective. The lighting on Chucky is eerie, and if you've seen any of these movies, you know the doll is alive, but they really didn't focus on making him that scary after that original film. The lighting, the music, and especially how you always see him in the background, like with what they do with Michael Myers, adds to the film's haunting atmosphere. You feel like for the first time you're watching a faithful sequel to the original, at least visually speaking. There's a tense scene where Chucky puts rat poison in one of the characters' bowls. The whole time you're wondering who got the poison bowl of chili, and it works until the little girl acts like her chili has something wrong with it. Now, in the old days, they'd almost never get away with killing a kid, and even today, it's still pretty taboo, but it's become a little more common. You also have to remember that this didn't play in theaters, so I think everyone's fair game here. The problem is, when the girl reacts the way she does, you'd seriously think that she got the rat poison, but no, it's the priest. And not only does he get poisoned, but the dumbass, knowing he doesn't feel well, decides to drive home and gets into a brutal accident where he ends up getting decapitated. It's really senseless, and worst of all, you don't actually feel like Chucky earned the kill. He's still alive when the police find him. It's only when the officers free up his body that he bleeds to death and his head falls off. After that, the movie goes through the motions. Like in the first film, they build up to the moment where they reveal Chucky's alive, but here, it's done through a series of jump scares. There's almost a moment where you think they're going to do the thing with the batteries being left out, but I guess they decided they didn't want to completely rehash the first film. When he does finally start walking around, it's good to hear Brad Dourif doing Chucky again, and he doesn't just go around spouting one-liners either. He's genuinely creepy, and they keep him in the shadows a lot of the time.
Chucky, I'm scared.
You fucking should be.
Of course, after Chucky's killed everyone, we have the final showdown between Chucky and Nika, in which Chucky reveals who his identity is. Now, I'm about to go into spoilers, so if you don't want to know about the ending, I gave you your chance. Through a series of flashbacks, Chucky reveals that he was a friend of Nika's family, and after her father died, Chucky, as Charles Lee Ray, kidnapped Nika's mother Sarah and planned to raise the family as his own. Sarah managed to call the police on Chucky, and before he made his escape, he stabbed Sarah in the stomach, which is what caused Nika to be born paralyzed. That in itself is pretty twisted, but then we find out that that was the night he was chased down by Detective Mike Norris from the first film, where Mike shot and presumably killed him. So naturally, Chucky blames Sarah and her then unborn child for his getting killed and ending up in a doll. I have to admit, when I first saw this scene, it completely ruined the movie for me. First of all, the tone is completely off from anything we've seen in the rest of the film. Brad Dourif is creepy when he plays himself, but I don't think his explanation for what happened comes across all that well. I actually had to look it up on Wikipedia to make sense of it, and only after watching a second time did I understand its purpose. It honestly doesn't make the film any better, and only serves to connect it with the first movie. Which is fine, I'm all for continuity, but it's just kind of weird and doesn't seem to fit the rest of the film. In fact, the last 10 minutes of the film are about connecting it to the rest of the series. At the beginning of the review, I said it appears to be a reboot. Well, toward the end, Chucky's true face is revealed, and we find out that he was just in disguise the whole time. He still has the scars from the last 2 movies. As if that wasn't enough, Jennifer Tilly actually does show up at the end of the film, revealing that she's the one who's been sending Chucky out to various victims to try and finish off past business. I should probably mention you're going to want to stick around until after the credits, because you're going to get a welcome cameo. Now, apparently, when the film came out, it got rave reviews. It even holds an 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I'm a little baffled by. The first time I saw the film, I honestly hated it. I thought it was trying too hard to be serious, and Chucky's whole explanation at the end of the film just seemed out of place. Going through it a second time, I'm kind of surprised they didn't at least try to get it into theaters, because for a direct-to-video film, it looks really slick. The whole movie takes place inside the house, which kept production costs low, so it doesn't have the scope of the other films, but it also gives it an eerie claustrophobic feel, and again, seeing Chucky walking down those steps is pretty chilling. I'd put it above Bride and Seed of Chucky, although I still don't think it comes anywhere near that original film. However, if you've been waiting to see Chucky return to his darker ways, and you've seen the first 3 films a zillion times, I'd say it's at least worth a rental.